know I got the receipts, girl. You know I got the receipts. Latoya Jackson is undeniably one of the more outspoken Jacksons. In her first book, Latoya even accused her father, Joseph Jackson, of molesting her and her sister Rebbie, saying that their mother, Catherine, knew about the abuse and even allowed it to continue. Latoya's claims were not received well by her family, causing her to become estranged from them for many years. Even after later reconciling with her family, the rumors still continue to this day, and they cause a lot of conversation. Now, it's also no secret that Latoya and Michael Jackson were very close, so it was shocking to hear of the allegations made against Latoya and her ex-fiancé, Jeffrey Phillips, after Michael's death. The pair were accused of ransacking Michael's home on the day of his death. Latoya said to have walked out of the Neverland Ranch with plastic bags full of money, while her boyfriend Jeffrey allegedly stole Michael's driver's license, pill bottles, CDs, handwritten notes, and more. But Latoya says that days before his death, Michael told her that he was scared for his life and he would be killed for his music catalog and estate. And what does Janet really think about her father, Joe Jackson's love child? Why is she jealous of the half-sister that Joe fathered with an LAPD secretary in the 70s? In this video, we will explore allegations made by Latoya Jackson, the conspiracy theories surrounding Michael Jackson's death, and the controversies that followed. In 2009, Conrad Murray alleged in a video that Joe Jackson was one of the worst fathers to his children in history. Conrad said, "The cruelty expressed by Michael that he experienced at the hand of his father, the fact that he was chemically castrated to maintain his high-pitched voice is beyond words." Conrad also made these allegations in his 2016 book, This Is It, The Secret Lives of Conrad Murray and Michael Jackson, accusing Joe of forcing Michael to get hormone injections at age 12 to cure his acne and prevent his voice from changing. Before his death, Michael Jackson also had been forthcoming about the troubles he faced with his father during his childhood. In the 2003 Martin Bashir documentary, Living with Michael Jackson, Michael said he was often hit by his father. "It was more than just a belt," Michael said, "cords, whatever was around." Michael detailed the strong hate that he had towards his father during those beatings, saying, "He'd throw you up against the wall as hard as he could. He would lose his temper. I was so fast, he couldn't catch me half of the time. But when he would catch me, it was bad. It was really bad. He would throw you and hit you as hard as he can. It's like, oh my God, why? Where is the love? Where is the fatherhood?" Now, Latoya has also claimed that Joe Jackson was abusive to his children, but she also alleged sexual abuse. In her 1991 memoir titled Growing Up with the Jackson Family, Latoya alleged that her father would get into her bed while her mother, Catherine, begged him to let her daughter sleep. She wrote in the book, "When your father gets out of the bed with your mother and gets into bed with his daughter, and you hear the mother saying, 'No, Joe, not tonight. Let her rest. Leave her alone. She's tired.' That makes you crazy." She alleged that older sister Rebbie Jackson moved out of the family home at age 16 due to the abuse. And this is when Joe's sexual violence against Latoya increased. In an interview on Live with Regis and Kathy Lee, during the promo for her book, Latoya repeated these accusations, saying, There wasn't just physical abuse, there was also mental abuse, which is very disturbing, and also sexual abuse. Asked whether that meant Joe had sexually abused her, Latoya replied, "Yes, he did, very badly." She went on to say, "It began with me when Rebbie left. You live with this as if you're doing something wrong and you're frightened and you're embarrassed. I've been embarrassed all my life to ever talk about it, to mention it." Now asked whether Joe had also preyed upon his other daughter, Janet Jackson, Latoya said, "I don't know. She's never spoken about it. I certainly hope he didn't."
Can we expect to see him?
Let's just say you'll see lots of things that you haven't heard.
Oh, that's a good plug for a book.
Okay?
But it's the story that we lived. I call it the life of a lie that we lived, because we always had to smile for the public.
Yes.
But inside there was so much pain.
My father beat me, and he beat me, and he beat me. And then he threw me in the bathroom, and he closed the door. Beat me with a belt buckle and a switch. He would take guns and put them to our heads and pull the trigger all the time until the day I left home. He would take matches and burn our toes, and he would laugh, and we couldn't do anything.
You can't say no because he beats you. You can't.
Yeah.
And it's bad because he would always tell me that I was nothing and I never will be nothing. Yeah. And I always remember these words.
He beat me. I didn't know why, because when you're young, you don't understand. But it was because I didn't speak up and talk in school. And the reason for that is because I saw so much going on inside the house. I said to myself, I don't want to be a part of this, and I would never talk. I was so quiet and shy. The brothers would say that my father would walk behind them, not with them, and he would say, I'm not with them. He was never there when any of us were born. And my mother had 11 children, and he wasn't there, she said, at any of the births. My brothers were grown, and my father would take his fist and he would punch them and knock them down the steps constantly.
Would they provoke him?
To this day, no, of course not. To this day, they are still afraid of my father, and they will tell you.
That's why I call it a life of a lie that we all lived, because our parents always told us to smile for the camera and pretend as if nothing was wrong. And in America, as you all know, we were sort of like quoted as the perfect image of an all-American family. And so we had to live up to that reputation no matter what.
Telling endless tales of physical abuse at the hands of an abusive father. Each day, Latoya's accusations seemed to become more intense, more vivid. And then finally, last week, they became devastating.
So you come on the show and you say, hey, look, I have a revelation to make. It's a painful revelation to make. I've never said this before on national television.
Right.
I was abused as a child by my father.
Right.
And what you're about to talk about is really even more shocking, because you say you were sexually abused by your father.
Yes, my sister and myself were both molested by my father. He would abuse my sister. We slept in the same bed, and he would sexually abuse her, come into the bed constantly, and I was right there in the same bed. So I recall him getting in the bed with us and doing the acts with her. And eventually my sister just decided that she wanted to leave home, that she could not deal with it anymore, so she left home. And that's when he started sexually abusing me when she left home. And Rebbie picked up the phone and she called the police one time, I recall, as a young girl. I recall it very, very well. And you know what I did?
Did the police come?
You know what I did later? Yes, they did.
And what happened?
And my mother said, oh, there's nothing wrong here. Everything's just fine. Thank you. My mother would allow it to happen. She would say to him sometimes, Joe, not tonight. She's tired. Don't bother her. And I would be right there in the bed. And I would keep the covers over my head because I would hear my sister fighting and screaming. And Rebbie would say, Mother, please go get him help. He needs help. And my mother wouldn't. My father was disturbed. I think any man who sexually abused his daughter, something is wrong right here. But nothing was wrong with my mother, and she allowed him to do these things. And Rebbie told me, she says, Latoya, I worried all these years about you and Janet. Did he ever do to you what he was doing to me? Did he ever sexually abuse you? And she said, please tell me. And I said, Rebbie, there's some things that we don't talk about, isn't there? I did not enjoy when he made me, can I say this, play with his and do things with his. I did not enjoy that. But that's something that went on. That's something that took place in our household.
Did you put that in the book?
The sexual abuse is definitely in my book. You have to read between the lines. I didn't elaborate.
That you don't write about in the book. You allude to it, that your sister Rebbie
I touch it very lightly because it's something that the book company did not want to really elaborate on because they felt that it would be infringing on someone's personal life. It's a very touchy subject, and it's dealing with my sister, and I wasn't able to talk about myself just yet. You have to be ready to come out and talk about these things. But I feel that abuse is something that we need to speak about, speak openly about. That's what's wrong with society today. I couldn't deal with it anymore. Mentally, I couldn't deal. I thought about my father and what he did to me every single day. I felt like I was going to explode if I didn't get the answers. I called my mother up on the phone several times. Mother, please tell me why Joseph did these things to me. Why did he do this? Why did he sexually abuse me? Why did you watch him do this? And she says, Latoya, this is something that's private. You keep it in the family. You don't tell people about it. When they denied it, that's when I had to come out and say, okay, he did it to me too.
I see.
Because I was tired of hiding and holding everything back.
I was hoping that this book and what I'm saying would unite the family by them coming out and saying, yes, this happened, and we're sorry that it happened. My brothers and sisters by saying, finally, somebody spoke out. Because they're not happy. Whether they say they are or not, they're not happy.
And they have all approached me at different times. And they've cried. And they've said, I'm terribly afraid of my father. It's a shame, but I can't stand to be in the same room with him. And they would always refer to him as, I hate him. I hate him. He used to play this game with me all the time. And say, Latoya, tell me the truth. If Joseph died, would you care? Would you cry? And I would say, why would you say that, would you? He goes, you answer first. I go, no, you answer. He says, no, I could care less. I wouldn't cry. I wouldn't miss him at all.
His book, Moonwalk, really didn't scratch the surface that you've really dug up.
No, because, again, this is very typical of a very dysfunctional family, and it shows you that he only wanted the public to know what he wanted them to know.
Michael will only tell you what he wants you to know, and the rest of the family will too. But it's not as sweet and apple pie-ish as they say. It's not the life that people think it is. It's very sad. And the only reason I'm speaking out is to let people know that it's okay to speak out and say that this family's dysfunctional, or what we've done was wrong, what my parents did to us was wrong.
The thoughts of suicide, did you have them or all of your siblings?
I can't say all of my siblings had them, but a lot of them did. Yes, they did have them. They tried to commit suicide. They've spoken about it. You have to realize, Larry, that we lived a very, very unhappy life. There were so many of my brothers and sisters who talked about and made attempts of committing suicide.
The point of the matter is, it's not which brother and sister tried to do it. The point of the matter is that we lived in a household that would drive you to do something like this.
My parents laid down certain rules, and one of those rules, of course, were you were not to leave home unless you were married, and of course I wasn't married, and they felt that I belonged at home.
You have to remember, we were raised very secludedly. My parents really kept a tab on everything we did. They would never really allow anyone to come really near us.
Why did you wait so long to get out of the house, Latoya?
I tried to leave several times, actually. And my parents are very good with throwing these guilt trips on you, saying you can't leave the house, you're a Jackson, and somebody's going to follow you, and they're going to kidnap you. And my father, he took my luggage, and he threw it back in the room, and he threw me in the room, and he closed the door and said, you're not going anywhere. You have to know this person. He's a very strong and robust man who pushes you back, no, you're not going anywhere, and if you do, I'll find you and bring you right back here. And your mother's saying, don't go, Latoya. And Janet's saying, it's not worth it. Stay home, it's not worth it.
Sent my father several letters, actually, but my father's the kind of person, he didn't acknowledge them. And when he would come home, it was very, very difficult for me because he would never mention it. And I would wonder, did he get that letter? Until that one day, and he came home and said, that's it. I'm not letting you go. I'm going to hold on to you. But it got to the point where I felt that it's my life, and I'm growing up, and I need to experience, and I need to kind of wet my feet a little bit.
Why did you marry your husband?
Because I had to.
Why?
Because my parents had kidnap attempts out after me, which I didn't believe. And the only way that I could protect myself is to have the last name Gordon. And I was performing one night, and the minute I got off the stage, my manager said, come with me. And I said, where? He says, I'm going to marry you. I said, you can't marry me. I don't even like you. He says, but you must marry me. He says, I have to protect you. The only thing you can do now is marry me, and your name will become Gordon, and you'll be my wife, and they can no longer say that or do that to you.
There's been 2 major kidnap attempts on Latoya that were stopped, that were paid and financed by Michael Jackson.
And I find it very ironic that my parents, who hate Mr. Gordon, and they didn't want this to happen, but they pushed us into a marriage that we didn't want, that I didn't want.
Still, you posed for the Playboy. Was that a way to punish your parents, or to say, now I'm grown up and I do whatever I want to do?
It was a way to show them that this is my independence. and I do what I choose and what I will. It's also a way of getting back at the religion to show them that you don't control and dictate to me anymore.
Well, you have to realize that when I did Playboy, of course, my parents were the first people that I thought about. And I said, well, gosh, what are they going to think? But then again, I've mentioned several times to Phil, it's my life, and I have to live it for me. I've lived 30 years of my life for my parents. And don't you think it's time for me to live for Latoya now?
Has the family generally been supportive here?
Well, somewhat. My parents, of course, are totally against it, and they think it's the worst thing that I could have ever done.
Yeah. Your brother, for example, has he seen the pictures, Michael?
Yes, he has.
And what did he think of these?
Well, actually, he saw them before they were ever printed, and he thought they were great.
Yeah.
And we spoke about it, and he said, I understand why you did it. And he says, I think it was a great career move, and he said, I think the pictures are lovely.
The first time I did it, my mother called me and said, as long as you live, don't you ever do that. I'll never speak to you. And I would call her constantly, and she'd hang the phone up in my face. And I said, that control is still there, still dominating my life, still controlling me, telling me what to do. This was my punishment for posing, not speaking to me.
I would have bet my life that my daughter wouldn't have gotten in Playboy and gotten naked. It was so hard for me. And the reason why my daughter, she always wore long dresses, she always wore pants or boots. She never exposed herself.
She was very conservative.
Very.
I'm just thinking it must be very hard for you.
Well, it is hard, but life goes on. I can't sit down and build up stress over what Latoya out there is saying. I got to keep on going. I got a life to live.
Well, it was hard for me. I'm telling you, it was very hard for me because I couldn't believe that I had a daughter out there saying things like this. It's the worst thing that ever happened to me in my life, besides the death of my mother.
I feel that she's being hypnotized, told a lot of stuff, and say, when you wake up, this is what happened. And because what she's saying is not true. So I just don't believe it's her. I don't think she'd go out there and tell all these lies.
I never abused any child at all, you know. So, but I did punish them. That's the only way I could get the attention to be professional entertainers.
This didn't happen, Joe?
No, it did not, Phil. It did not happen, and I don't know anything about that, and Catherine can bear with me.
It's all lies, Phil. It's not the truth.
You, she claims, Catherine, are an anti-Semite, which you spoke often and negatively about Jews.
Phil, that is not true.
That's not true, Phil.
Anyone knew who Toya was married to, who her which is her manager to. If they know her, if they know his background, they know that this is what this man does. I'm not putting all the blame on him. I blame my daughter too. I feel sorry for her. I feel that she's being brainwashed.
Your family claims that it's your manager, who's also your husband, who kind of forces you to write this book and to do all these things.
No, he has absolutely nothing to do with it. As a matter of fact, he never knew about the abuse. He always assumed. I would always deny it with him. I would always say no, but he always assumed. And other people would tell him, and he would say, tell me the truth, and I would never tell him.
What would you want to say to her? What would you want her to know?
I'd like to say to her that we still love her, and we know that she said a lot of things about us that's not true. And we wish she'd stop all this, what she's saying, and come on back home. We're not trying to make her stay if she don't want to. She's her own woman, but come back into the family fold.
Is your mother an awful character, yes or no?
I would say absolutely yes. But to the public, she appears like an angel. When she's on television, she's, oh, Latoya, I love you so much. Please come home and please call. And what do? I pick up the phone and I call, and she hangs up.
What I would like to see more than anything else is to have my parents on television with me, and we discuss this and get it out in the open.
Why doesn't any one of your siblings support you now when you reveal the truth about your family?
Because it's something that you keep quiet. It's a stage that you go through, a denial stage.
I mean, the stories that you've heard about abuse and all that, that's not true. And I know my sister has said lots of things and lots of lies about myself. That bothers me very much for her to say something like that. But I think, I'm not going to harp on this, but I think it's just a way of getting attention, the attention that she didn't get from the public. I know she's always, she's never really had the success that the rest of the family really has had. And now she's being acknowledged by the public because of this. And it's like kind of like her claim to fame in a sense.
what appears to be a united front against Latoya, she insists Michael feels the same way about their father as she does, no matter what he says publicly. She says Michael gets physically sick before a performance if he knows his father is in the audience.
And I said, why? And he says, because I don't like him, I hate him, and I'll get sick to my stomach and I won't be able to perform. He doesn't want to look anything like my father. There's a lot they don't know. And that could be one of the reasons why he's doing this.
Latoya knows people often compare the two of them, but she says even she was shocked by what she saw at the Super Bowl.
When I saw him, of course, you know, he's your brother and I love him dearly. And it was, gosh, he looks so different.
You all aren't all upset about Latoya and Latoya's book and the things that Latoya has said about the family?
Well, I haven't read Latoya's book. I just know I love my sister dearly. I love Latoya, and I always will. And I always see her as the happy, loving Latoya that I remember growing up with. So I couldn't completely answer on that.
Do you feel that some of the things that she's been saying are true?
I couldn't answer, Oprah. Honestly, I haven't read the book. That's the honest truth.
Some family, they're so wholesome. And, you know, we all took pictures together back in the 5 years ago. We were all so close, and Joseph was, you know, Papa Joe, you know. And then Toya told the truth. For everything, you know, because that's publicity. The Jackson family, they lived in a ghetto in Gary, Indiana, and they made it, and they're so tight-knit, my ass.
Is there a second family of sorts that he has?
He has another daughter, yes. She's very proud from what I understand. She goes around and she gives interviews and tells everybody that she's the sister of the Jacksons. We have never seen her. Her father does have another family.
Like a second a mistress and children and...
Yes.
Your mother always aware of this?
My mother's very much aware of it. As a matter of fact, she was very disturbed by it at one point when they lived on the other side of town, and he actually moved them right up under our nose in the same neighborhood. My mother was very hurt by it.
Really?
My mother also wrote a book, and she also mentions that in her book, and she also mentions my father's second family and so many other things. But she omitted this from her book in America, but the book that she wrote in Paris, it's still there.
Daughter by another woman, and that you led a double life, and that you housed your other family in the same neighborhood. Is this true, Joe?
No.
You don't have another family?
No daughter named Anna, Phil.
She says that Catherine knows about this, Joe.
Latoya been talking the whole family, not just me, just the whole family.
Catherine, do you have anything to say about that?
Well, Phil, the only thing I'd like to say is I feel that my daughter's being brainwashed. I feel that, and I know who's doing it, and he know he know what he's doing. The minute she left his house, that was his intention. She's not the only one he's done like that. He's tried to do some other woman that he was staying with the same way, but he didn't succeed in that.
Now a newly blonde Latoya is announcing a 900 number to reveal more Jackson family secrets.
They will definitely hear my voice in a weekly recording. It will be basically a menu, and you decide on who you want to hear about.
She also promises to reveal secrets about Michael's plastic surgery, his skin color, his relationships with Lisa Marie, Brooke Shields.
I don't want to really say anything about my family, but, you know, you can say it in a way where, you know, it's done in a pleasant way, and at the same time, you're speaking the truth, and you're telling the truth, and you're not being misquoted.
Was I mad at my sister? Yes, I was very upset. I was very hurt because there were a lot of lies that were told, and I hadn't seen my sister for a very long time, but we've spoken recently. And
do you know why she would do that?
Yes, I do know why now. And she was in a lot of pain, physically being abused, as well as a lot of mental.
Were you ever abused?
No.
Did you ever see abuse?
No.
So this had to shock you, Latoya said these things.
Yeah, it was very surprising.
But now you understand.
But now I guess you have to put yourself in the situation. Would I have done that, or would I not have? I think I probably would not have done it and just would have gotten my butt kicked until, I mean, I hate to say that, but
that's just me. But everyone's different, and she's totally apologized for everything that she's done, and she's with the family again, and that's the most important thing.
Her memoir came out just 2 years before she had blasted Katherine Jackson for allegedly knowing about Michael's alleged pedophilia for years. In 1993, Latoya gave a televised interview in which she alleged that Katherine had found checks made out to the parents of little boys as early as 1984. There were 2 checks that I know of that she has shown me, and it's for a substantial amount of money, and she was outraged over it, Latoya claimed. My mother is very much aware of the children that were there, all the boys that stayed there. She's the one who always said that Michael, excuse my expression, that faggot. She would say, I can't stand him, that damn faggot. I can't stand him. Latoya added, that's what she would say all the time. She knows it, and now she's denying it, and that's what hurts. Latoya also documented these allegations of Michael's sexually predatory behavior in the mid-1990s, claiming that she knew her brother had little boys over to stay in his bedroom. I know he would have boys over all the time, she said. They would stay in there for days, and then they would come out and another boy would go in, and then he would bring someone else, she claimed, but never 2 at a time. In a clip from 1993, Latoya Jackson told the press, I cannot, will not be a silent collaborator of his crimes against small innocent children. If I remain silent, then it means I feel the guilt and humiliation these children are feeling, and I think it's very wrong. She told the cameras before claiming to have seen checks for very, very large sums made payable to the parents of these children, alleging that she herself had been sexually abused. I am a victim myself, and I know what it feels like, and these kids are going to be scarred for the rest of their lives, and I don't want to see any more innocent small children being affected this way. I love Michael dearly, but I feel even more sorry for these children because they don't have a life anymore. They don't. She then asked the viewers to consider what a then 35-year-old Michael Jackson was doing, spending long periods of time with young boys. Now you stop and think for 1 second and you tell me, what 35-year-old man is going to take a little boy and stay with him for 30 days and take another boy and stay with him for 5 days in a room and never leave the room? How many of you out there are 35 years old? How many would take a little kids and do that? They're 9, 10, 11 years old? I love my brother, but it's wrong. Her comments were made after the father of 13-year-old Jordy Chandler accused Michael Jackson of molesting his son. No charges were ever brought, and the case was settled out of court. Now, even with the accusations that Latoya has made about her family and her brother, she still had a very close relationship with Michael. So close that she said in the past that she was the guinea pig for his nose job.
He's saying that he was terribly unhappy with his nose. It's like, is it too big? Is it too big?
Michael's sister and surgery buddy Latoya.
This is, can you be the guinea pig? Can you get your nose done and let me see how it looks? All of a sudden, he goes through this stage where things started changing. And then the acne came. And it's almost as if you're saying, what happened to me? What happened to my body? Who am I? Who's this person that's developing? I'm not that cute little kid anymore. His entire personality changed. He became very withdrawn, very shy.
He didn't want to look like Joe. So that was the basis for starting the surgery.
That's when he started becoming independent and saying, this is what I want. This is what I want.
The result of Michael Jackson's collaboration with music producer Quincy Jones was to be a sensation. With Off the Wall, Michael emerged as a solo artist with a vibrant disco look and killer dance moves.
He was on the right track with music and he was happy about everything, and it's like, is it too big? Is it too big? It's like, it's you, it's your, no, but it's too big, and I want to get it done. I hate I'm telling you guys this. I'm just gonna be totally honest with you. He asked me, he says, can you be the guinea pig for me? He says, can you be the guinea pig? Can you get your nose done and let me see how it looks, and if it hurts, no. But I said, Michael, he says, please be the guinea pig for me. I did, I got my nose done, yes.
Happy with how Latoya's new nose looked, Michael went ahead with his own nose job.
And I remember the two of us going to the doctor and talking to him. I was right there through every step. But Michael got his nose done, and he was happy. Does it look better? Yeah, it looks better.
Latoya Jackson claims the explanation for her brother's changing nose shape wasn't down to more surgery.
When you get your nose done, your nose keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller within a period of 1 year to 2 years. Off the Wall and Thriller, that's the same nose.
Cosmetic experts also believe that Michael may have had other procedures to his face.
You can also see, I believe, a little bit of filler here in the cheek area.
Michael did not get his cheekbones done. Absolutely not. The Jacksons have high cheekbones. And I think when you have that augmentation, you get your nose done, it brings out other features. Because the nose becomes smaller, so the cheekbone stands out.
There might be disagreement about his face, but what wasn't in doubt by 1984 was that Michael Jackson was a global superstar. That year, he premiered his iconic Moonwalk. Thriller became the biggest-selling album of all time. At the peak of his powers, Michael would embark on yet more changes to his face.
We rushed over to the hospital, went in there, and I said, Michael, what happened? He says, I don't really know. He said, I just know that my head caught a fire.
I happened to be in the hospital the night that Michael Jackson was brought in. Stephen Hofflin was in charge of the burn unit.
Dr. Hofflin, who had previously performed nasal surgery on Michael, oversaw the treatment of his injuries.
The doctor said, we're going to have to do surgery, of course, and close the hole where it had burnt his head in the center. The hole was like this, and they kept doing skin grafts to bring it in closer and closer so his hair would come back together to meet again.
On the autopsy.
While Latoya and Michael shared a bond while the singer was alive, it was shocking to hear of the accusations made against Latoya after his death. It is speculated that Latoya and her then fiancé, Jeffrey Phillips, did some pretty shady things on the day that Michael died, which later led Michael Jackson's estate to take action. The estate accused Latoya's ex, Jeffrey Phillips, of stealing handwritten notes, 5 hard drives, 3 laptops, and other property worth $1 million. In recent months, Michael Jackson's estate went to court, laying out all of the property that they believe Latoya's ex improperly took from Michael's house in the days after his death. According to court documents, the estate provided to the court a full inventory of the items they want returned immediately. According to the estate, they said that Phillips stayed in Michael's home for 9 days and took advantage of the chaos in the home so that he could steal things. The estate said that Phillips took a bunch of personal property owned by Michael, including his iPhone, driver's license, prescription pill bottles, pajamas, and clothes. The estate said that Phillips also took roughly 109 CDs or DVDs, most of which either contained handwritten notes on them or they were private special editions. He took personal and legal papers, handwritten notes, 5 hard drives, a microphone set, a photo album with Jackson on the cover, 3 silver Mac laptops, 2 iPods, 2 dictaphones with 2 micro cassettes, 3 standard cassette tapes, a black bag with a skull on it, a signed framed photograph of Michael, a Michael Jackson doll, roughly 11 framed platinum gold record awards worth at least $1 million. Now, the record awards, I'm assuming those awards would be awards like Grammys or American Music Awards that Michael won during his career. Now, on top of all of that, they say that Phillips also removed the pajamas that Michael Jackson was wearing before his death and a resuscitator tube used on Michael. The estate also told the court they had uncovered an alleged plot by Mr. Phillips to sell off Michael Jackson's memorabilia. The executors of the estate said that Latoya and Phillips showed up at Michael's home in June of 2009 after he was rushed to the hospital, at which time the items were stolen. In August of 2022, Phillips met up with an individual who had asked to view the memorabilia. However, the estate was actually the ones behind this meeting and had sent someone secretly to see if Phillips wanted to sell the items. The estate ended up seizing the property. Phillips, who dated Latoya from 1995 to 2015, denied he stole the property and claimed that Michael's mother, Catherine, had instructed him to take the items. In his declaration, Phillips said that the allegations are not true, that he and Latoya were engaged to be married during the last 1.5 years of their relationship. He said that throughout their relationship, they lived together, worked together, toured together, starred in their own reality show together, and operated as a single family unit. He said that during this time, he became close with the entire Jackson family. Although the property was given to me and the belongings were given to me, I would have not refused to give the property to the Jackson family. So then flash forward to April of 2022. Phillips said that he was invited to show off these pieces to an auction company. He claimed that he believed that he was meeting a collector and memorabilia enthusiast, and he never had any intention of selling any of the items. However, at this meeting, Phillips said that after showing the items, one of the men showed him a badge and told him that he would be confiscating all of the items on behalf of the Jackson estate. He tried to object, but was then escorted out of the building. Phillips wrote in his declaration to the court that the entire ordeal has taken a significant mental and emotional toll on him and has affected his personal life, and people no longer trust him in his business life. He stated that all the estate and Jackson family had to do was simply ask him for the property. They did not need to resort to the premeditated bullying tactics that they resorted to. Now, the judge is yet to rule on this matter. Now, coupled with the accusation that Jeffrey stole items from Michael's home, attorneys for the estate also issued a cease and desist to the book publisher Simon & Schuster, who released Latoya Jackson's memoir. In the book, Latoya made accusations about the people that are running Michael's estate. She released the memoir titled Starting Over back in 2011, which was co-written with Jeffrey Phillips. In promoting the book, Simon & Schuster's press release read, Michael Jackson's closest sister pulls back the curtain to reveal the inner workings of the Jackson family, Michael's tortured soul, and her own love for her brother in this intimate portrait of a beloved yet troubled pop legend. Now, the estate cease and desist read, in connection with the promotion of the book, Ms. Jackson has made repeated public statements accusing the executors of murdering Mr. Jackson in order to steal his music catalog. We understand that these same absurd accusations are included in the book. Ms. Jackson has also made statements to the effect that John Branca, one of Michael Jackson's attorneys, stole $150 million from Michael Jackson and hid it in an offshore account. You must certainly know that these statements are outrageous, false, and unlawful. Now, while the statements give Ms. Jackson the attention she obviously craves, the remarks are likely to cause substantial harm to the estate, the beneficiaries of the estate, and the executors. By falsely accusing those in charge of killing Michael and stealing his money, the statements can reasonably be expected to cause people and companies who would otherwise do business with the estate to avoid or refuse to do so. Now, the letter further warned the publisher that they were on formal notice that the estate intended to hold them responsible if they continued to allow Latoya to make such public statements. The estate went on to say that the statements were false and sensational and were only made to peddle the book. The estate demanded a retraction from the publisher that said neither Latoya or the company had any basis to accuse the executors of murdering Michael Jackson, whether for his catalog or otherwise. Their statement read, if you do not make this retraction, we have been authorized to pursue any and all of the estate's legal rights against all those involved in the creation, distribution, and publication of the false statements, whether contained in the book or repeated elsewhere. Now, to date, no lawsuit was ever filed over Latoya's book. So exactly how did Michael Jackson die? Well, on June 25th of 2009, Michael Jackson died of a cardiac arrest at the age of 50 as a result of a deadly cocktail of sedatives and an anesthetic, propofol, which was administered by his physician, Conrad Murray.
As Michael Jackson's personal assistant, what were your responsibilities, Mr. Williams?
I managed day-to-day schedules, arranged, set up phone calls, meetings, planned trips, anything big to anything small, just anything he needed.
Would you also consider yourself to have been a friend of Michael's?
Oh, yes, sir.
You would see him on a daily basis?
Yes, sir. Several times a day.
Do you know Conrad Murray?
Yes, sir.
Do you see him in court here today?
Yes, sir, I do.
Could you please identify him for the record?
The gentleman sitting with the gray suit.
Indicating Dr. Murray, the defendant.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
And at some point, I guess in early 2008, he was introduced to you as Michael Jackson's doctor?
And I can't recall if I was introduced, but I started calling him. Mr. Jackson requested me to call Dr. Murray. The children have a code, or he would help with anything as far as if they were ill, if the children were ill, or if he hurt or something.
On June 25th, 2009, did you receive a phone call from Conrad Murray?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And do you recall what time that phone call was received by you?
To my knowledge, it was 12:13 p.m.
Okay. That's what showed up on your phone?
Yes, sir.
And was that a phone call that you were able to answer?
No, sir.
Why is that?
I was in the shower getting ready to get dressed.
Okay. When did you learn of the phone call?
I was getting out and I checked, and I believe calling back at around 12:15 when I got the message.
So you got out of the shower, you saw there was a message?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You heard the message?
Yes, sir.
And what was the message?
It was Dr. Murray. I can't quote it exactly, but it was, "Call me right away, thank you." Something to that effect.
And were you asked to call 911?
No, sir.
Okay. Did you, upon hearing that message, call Dr. Murray?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And were you able to make contact with him?
Yes, sir.
Did he ask you to call 911?
No, sir.
What did he say?
He said, "Where are you?" And I said, "I'm downtown." And he said, "Get here right away. Mr. Jackson had a bad reaction. Get here right away." And I said, "What's going on?" And he said, "Get somebody up here immediately." And then...
And did that terminate that phone call?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, the voicemail message that Dr. Murray left on your phone, did you document that in some way?
Yes, sir.
How did you document that?
I was told from detectives, or meeting with some people, detectives I believe, to save all my information that I have regarding this.
What are you doing at this time?
Oh, I remember feeling bad. I don't know what's going on. I remember being scared. So I was just calling. I remember making a lot of phone calls, like, what's going on, And then I found out the ambulance was called. Then I got really like the ambulance. So I remember getting dressed very fast, getting in the car. But I remember it being a lot of traffic, and it took me a while to get to the home. It was real frantic. I don't say giving instructions, but just talking to medics.
All right. And were the children, Prince, Paris, and Blanket, at the location at that time?
Yes, sir.
Where were the children when you first saw them?
Well, when I first got there, that was the first thing I asked. Where were the children? I'm not sure if they were already in the car or if I loaded them in the car. Okay. But we got them in the car to get ready to follow the ambulance.
Okay. Did you learn that Michael had been pronounced dead?
Yes, sir. Okay,
and that was at UCLA?
Yes, sir.
Following your learning that Michael Jackson had been pronounced dead, do you recall an incident where Dr. Murray approached you and made a request that you found odd?
Yes, sir.
First of all, do you recall where that took place?
It was sometime after. It wasn't too long, but it was after the family was already there. The children were with them.
And where were you?
I was in a hallway.
Okay.
Sure, which one?
And what, if anything, was the request of Conrad Murray to you?
Well, we were making small talk about how horrible this is, and both of us, I believe, had was tearing.
Okay.
And he asked. He said that there's some cream in Michael's room or house, I believe room, that he wouldn't want the world to know about. And he requested that I or someone give him a ride back to house to get it so the world, wouldn't know about the cream.
To get the cream so the world wouldn't know about it?
Yes, sir. Some cream that Michael wouldn't want the world to know about.
Okay. And in response to this request, did you agree to take Conrad Murray back to the house?
No, sir.
In response to this request for him to retrieve this cream, what did you do?
I said, let me check.
And what did you do to check?
I left. Because of the situation, I was emotional. There was a lot going on. I just thought that was the last thing I was really thinking about. So I went to Fahim. Fahim Muhammad. I told him about Dr. Murray's request, and we both agreed that can't happen. You can't go back to the house. I knew that much.
Did you conduct the autopsy on the decedent, in this case, Michael Joseph Jackson?
Yes.
When did you conduct that autopsy, Dr. Rogers?
That was on June 26, 2009.
And going through the findings you made on June 26, 2009, let me ask you initially, on that day, June 26, were you able to definitively state a cause of death?
No.
And why not?
There wasn't anything obvious in the history or the autopsy examination that showed a cause of death.
Okay. Let me ask you about the general health of Mr. Jackson as related by you and your findings in the autopsy report. Generally speaking, how would you characterize the overall health of Mr. Jackson based on your autopsy findings?
I believe that he was healthier than the average person of his age. He had an enlargement of the prostate gland, which meant that it was difficult to urinate, so he was retaining urine.
Okay.
He had vitiligo, which is a skin disorder, and he had a polyp of his colon. The nervous system showed mild diffuse swelling. The lung examination showed some chronic inflammation and scarring in the lungs. The radiology examination showed an extra rib and also some arthritis. There was an area of irregular pigmentation at about the top of the scalp.
Were you aware that his scalp had caught on fire many years prior?
Yes.
And that was through filming of a commercial where there was an accident that took place?
Yes.
Did you also, Doctor, examine the stomach in detail to determine if you could find any pill tablets or pill capsules of any kind in the stomach?
Yes, I did.
And what were your findings in regard to the contents of the stomach as it related to any pills or tablets of any nature?
The stomach contained 70 grams of dark fluid, but did not show pills or capsules.
And was that something specifically you were looking for in this case to determine if oral administration of pills or tablets could have been a potential for the cause of death?
Yes.
Were you able to ascertain and make a determination as to the manner of death regarding Michael Jackson?
Yes.
And what was the manner of death?
The manner was homicide. For example, Dr. Murray's statement to the police indicated that the propofol and other medications were administered by another person.
So you're commenting that Dr. Murray admitted to administering the benzodiazepines and the propofol.
That's correct.
Okay.
Secondly, there was not an appropriate medical indication. The problem that Mr. Jackson was having was that he couldn't sleep, and it's not appropriate to give propofol in that situation. The risk outweighs the benefit.
And did you also consider the setting in which this was taking place?
Yes, the setting was outside of a hospital or clinic. It was apparently in a home, and so there were a number of things that would ordinarily be used with propofol that were not available in this case. For example, there was not an EKG monitor. There was not a precision dosing device like an IV pump so that you know how much propofol the doctor is giving him. There was not equipment available to resuscitate Mr. Jackson adequately if he were to stop breathing. For example, there was not an endotracheal tube or medication that could be used to improve his circulatory function. And then finally, the circumstances, from my point of view, do not support self-administration of propofol.
Did you determine what the cause of death was as it related to Michael Jackson's death on June 25th, 2009?
Yes.
What was the cause of death, Dr. Rogers?
The cause was acute propofol intoxication, and the contributing condition was benzodiazepine effect.
Assuming just 25 milligrams of propofol was administered, in your expert opinion, is this what happened to Michael Jackson?
No.
Why?
If you look at the concentration here, if he had gone apneic at 2 minutes, he would continue to have circulation at least out here at 10 minutes because the heart just doesn't stop. When you no longer are breathing, there's oxygen in your lungs, and he was on extra oxygen anyway. So he has a period of at least 10 minutes. So going from 2 minutes here really I'm just going out 8 minutes, but look how low the levels are. They're vanishingly small. This is what was measured by the coroner, and the actual levels at 10 minutes were vanishingly small. So this didn't happen.
And Michael Jackson then must have received more than 25 milligrams.
Yes, Michael Jackson received more than 25 milligrams.
First of all, how would one self-inject propofol?
Self-injecting propofol would involve first drawing up the propofol in the syringe. As you saw yesterday, that's actually not that easy to do. You would then find the injection port on the tubing, and you would have to then attach the needle through the injection port and push it in. This is something which takes a little bit of time and a little bit of coordination to do.
And what about not using a syringe? In other words, using a syringe or an IV line? Or let me just ask you the two scenarios. Once you were able to retrieve the drug from the vial, There are two possibilities, right?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question. Yes, there are two possibilities. If you had good veins, you could just stick your own vein and inject it without having an intravenous line at all. But it's very clearly explained in Dr. Murray's interview that Michael Jackson did not have good veins. In fact, his veins were so poor that Dr. Murray had to start this IV in a vein that was below his left knee. So to have to resort to a vein below the left knee suggests that there were no good veins that were accessible to Dr. Murray. So the possibility of a direct self-injection seems extremely unlikely, and also propofol stings. You would not want to inject this into, you would not want to try to inject it into a vein and miss, because that would actually be extremely painful. So with just one dose, the blood level goes way up. He goes well past the brain level. Again, this is an anesthetic induction dose, or very close to it. So the brain level goes way above the apnea threshold, and he would stop breathing here. So now, once he gets down to this level of 0.5, to allow him to self-administer the next dose. But again, it's another blast, another anesthetic induction dose. And he might well stop breathing at this dose. But his heart wouldn't stop until here. And that is well below what was measured in the femoral vein. And even taking this out now for 6 consecutive doses, and I mean, you know, this is a notion of somebody who's putting themselves unconscious, a general anesthetic dose, then waking up and drawing up drug, and which takes time, and re-injecting it. I mean, people just don't wake up from anesthesia like that. People just don't wake up, you know, hell-bent to grab the next dose in a syringe, draw it up, and shove it in their IV again. I mean, it's a crazy scenario. I've never seen anything. It just doesn't happen. But for the purposes of discussion, if that did happen.
Well, in fact, as you said in the earlier scenario, 100 milligram dose would be fatal anyways. Likely. And
likely. He likely would have died after the first one here or after the second one, but he would have died with a low blood level.
Right. And the blood level from 100 milligram single dose or 6 repeated doses in this scenario would not result in the blood levels found in the femoral blood at the time of autopsy.
That is correct. There are studies. There are studies that look at autopsies of propofol self-administration, and this is what they show: low blood levels.
Now, so then in this scenario, then, based on a single 100 milligram dose likely being fatal, you took this through, just for sake of demonstration, 6 repeated dosages of the same amount.
Correct. Somehow he survives each one and wakes up enough to give himself another dose. And the point here is that even with 6 of these, we still don't have a high enough femoral level. Even doing this 6 times in a row, the level that would be observed at the time that circulation stops is below what was found in the femoral vein.
To save Michael Jackson's life. Jurors today in the manslaughter trial of Jackson's personal physician, Dr. Conrad Murray, listened to a recording of the star's security guard pleading with emergency personnel for help. But perhaps even more startling was what went on in that room right before the call was made. Here's ABC's Jim Avila in Los Angeles for our series Crime and Punishment.
Heart-wrenching stories from the bodyguard and cook who worked for Michael Jackson. First-hand accounts of the failure to save his life and how Prince came to watch.
Please raise your right hand.
Her name is Kai Chase, cook and gentle-spirited nutritionist who's in the kitchen on the day Michael Jackson died. She's preparing a spinach Cobb salad with organic turkey breast for her boss and 3 children. When just after noon, the normal peace in the house is broken by a screaming Conrad Murray.
His energy was very nervous and frantic, and he was shouting.
What did he shout?
Get help, get security, get Prince. I dropped what I was doing and I ran to go get Prince. I said, hurry, Dr. Murray needs you. There may be something wrong with your father.
So Prince follows Dr. Murray up the stairs to Michael Jackson's private quarters, and the chef goes back to the kitchen. Now, if you're wondering why, in an emergency involving her boss, the cook would send a 12-year-old boy to help, so was the defense on cross-examination.
You saw Dr. Murray frantic, eyes wide, yelling. Did you think that a 12-year-old child was going to be able to assist this doctor with a problem with Michael?
I did what I was told. And I did what I was told, and I went to get Prince.
And she, like Dr. Murray, did not call 911. Who did?
Please state your name for the record.
Alberto Alvarez.
Alberto Alvarez may be the key witness in the case against Michael Jackson's personal doctor, bodyguard, head of the advance team, and first in the room where Dr. Conrad Murray was desperately working to bring their boss back to life. It was Alvarez who finally called for an ambulance.
We have a gentleman here that needs help, and he's not breathing yet. He's not breathing. I'm trying to contact, sir. Where's he at right now? He's on the bed, sir. He's on the bed. Okay, let's get him on the floor.
For the prosecution, Alvarez makes it clear the doctor was not doing CPR correctly, pumping his chest on the soft surface of Jackson's bed instead of the floor. And he puts Dr. Murray firmly in control of the scene.
The doctor's the only one here. Okay, so the doctor see what happened? Doctor, did you see what happened, sir? He's pumping the chest, but he's not responding to anything, sir. Please.
Alvarez started his day as normal at his post outside the rented Jackson mansion, in the guard trailer on the front driveway. He's called by Jackson's personal assistant and told to go through the front door of the main house, up the staircase to Jackson's private suite, where he finds a dying Michael.
He was laying on his back with his hands extended out. I observed that his eyes were slightly open or were open, and his mouth was open.
Dr. Murray asks Alvarez to help, pumping Michael's chest, while Dr. Murray, veteran medical professional, does something he has never done before.
He was giving mouth-to-mouth, sir. I recall that after a couple or a few breaths that he breathed into Mr. Jackson, he came up and he said, this is the first time I do mouth-to-mouth, but I have to. He's my friend.
It was Dr. Murray who tells Alvarez to call for an ambulance, but he's distracted by a scream. Prince is back, and this time his sister Paris is with him.
They were right behind me, and Paris screamed out, "Daddy!" Dr. Conrad Murray said, "Don't let them see their dad like this."
So Alvarez rushes them out of the room and is about to call 911 when there's another delay. Dr. Murray asks him to do something first, a critical request prosecutors contend shows Dr. Murray's guilt.
He reached over and grabbed a handful of vials, and then he reached out to me and said, "Here, put these in a bag."
Then Alvarez says Dr. Murray points to the IV bag and asks that it too be put away in the doctor's blue medical bag. Perhaps prosecutors have inferred that is why Dr. Murray was so anxious to return to the mansion after Jackson was pronounced dead. Because inside the IV bag he asked Alvarez to hide was what the prosecution contends is the weapon in this manslaughter case, a bottle dripping a milky white liquid, the appearance of propofol, the anesthesia nicknamed milk that killed Michael Jackson.
It was later concluded that Michael's death was a homicide, and Conrad Murray was charged with involuntary manslaughter in November of 2011. Now, the story of Michael Jackson's death has its roots in his deteriorating health over the last 20 years of his life. It is claimed that he suffered from an eating disorder, stress, insomnia, and a reliance on prescription medication. Michael's addiction to prescription meds was said to have played a key role in the events surrounding his death. On the 24th of June, which was the day before his death, Michael was in rehearsals for his final This Is It comeback tour. Nothing seemed amiss that day at the Staples Center, with fellow performers stating that Michael seemed in top form. The rehearsal even went on past midnight, and afterward, Michael still found time to greet fans that had gathered outside of the gate of his residence when he got home. But it was soon after arriving home that the problems began. Michael complained of fatigue and insomnia. Michael's physician, Conrad Murray, had been called to administer to Michael a series of drugs over the course of the early morning hours of June 25th to help Michael fall asleep. Later in the afternoon, when Michael failed to leave his room, Conrad Murray went to check on him, only to find that Michael Jackson was unresponsive and no longer breathing, though Murray claimed that Michael still had a weak pulse. He attempted to revive Michael, though Murray's CPR technique was later questioned, as well as the fact that he chose to do the CPR on a soft bed rather than a hard surface. Questions also arose regarding the time that it took Murray to get help. There was also no landline phone in Michael's residence, and Murray stated that he did not know the address well enough to call the paramedics by cell phone. As a result of this, 30 minutes passed before security at the residence eventually made the call to paramedics. Emergency services performed CPR once they arrived for 42 minutes before rushing Michael Jackson to the hospital. Now, once at the hospital, emergency services attempted to resuscitate Michael, but after over an hour of trying, he was pronounced dead on June 25th, 2009 at 2:26 p.m. Now, the Los Angeles County coroner determined that Michael Jackson's death was a homicide as a result of combined drug intoxication. The toxicology report suggested that the most important drug found in Michael's system was the propofol. However, lidocaine, ephedrine, and lorazepam were also found in his system. Following his death, police found drugs in his home, including some made out to false names. Statements were also made by family members, former doctors, and associates expressing concern over Michael's weight and continued use of prescription meds. His health and history of drug use during his later years became a concern. Now, the finding that Michael Jackson died from a propofol overdose led to Conrad Murray being charged with involuntary manslaughter on February 8th of 2010. He was sentenced to 4 years in jail over his role in Michael's death. Latoya Jackson was thrilled and tweeted victory after leaving the courthouse. Latoya admitted that she was shaking uncontrollably when going in to hear the verdict. Family members had watched the trial unfold from the public gallery. Now, on her way out of the courthouse after the guilty verdict was read, Latoya was overjoyed, saying Michael was looking over them. She later posted on Twitter, "Michael, I love you, and I will continue to fight until all are brought to justice." But after receiving the 4-year sentence for Michael's death, Conrad was released in only 2 years as a result of good behavior. But there has been some sort of justice, as Conrad Murray's license to practice medicine in California remains suspended. But just exactly what was Latoya getting at when she said that she would continue to fight until all were brought to justice? Latoya Jackson believes that there was a conspiracy to kill her brother. And although she was happy that Conrad Murray was held accountable for his part in the death of Michael, Latoya says that Conrad is just the fall guy. She says that there was a conspiracy to murder Michael, and in an interview with Piers Morgan, Latoya said, "People come into your life, wiggle their way in, control you, manipulate, control your funds, your finances, everything that you have." She said that her brother knew he was going to be killed, and she claimed that Michael told her shortly before his death, "Latoya, I'm going to be murdered for my music publishing catalog and my estate." She further said to Piers in that interview, "Michael told me that they were going to murder him. He was afraid. He was afraid for his life. I believe that when Michael walked in that house that night, whatever it was that greeted him, he knew that his end was upon him. And as soon as he passed, some of the very people he had expressed suspicions about now controlled his estate. She also said that Michael's children were also worried about him, sensing something was about to happen. While Latoya did not specifically accuse anyone of masterminding the murder, she condemned the behavior of Dr. Tomey, who managed Michael's affairs towards the end of his life. She said, "As soon as Dr. Tomey began acting as Michael's business advisor, he fired key people who had been close to Michael for years. Once Tomey shut out the rest of the world, he would be able to steer Michael towards business ventures that were profitable for Tomey and his friends." Latoya did admit to searching Michael's bedroom after his death, and she said that she found notes scattered everywhere, including written pleas to, quote, "help get these people out of my life," that were written by Michael Jackson. Now, with Michael being in the last stages of rehearsals for his gigantic comeback tour, Latoya blames everyone that surrounded that project for Michael's death. Latoya also said that she felt that Conrad Murray was simply the fall guy. "I think it's too easy to blame him. I think the investigation needs to go further," implicating that there are others involved in Michael's death, others that are at a higher level than Conrad Murray. Latoya suggested in her memoir, Starting Over, that there were people around Michael that planned to take him out, and he knew it. She alleges in the book that John Branca, a co-executor of Michael's estate, may have been involved. She said in her book, they only care about what they can do and what they can get their hands on. Now, when Latoya and her mother, Catherine Jackson, were at the residence the day that Michael died, Vanity Fair reported that Latoya and Mama Catherine ransacked Michael's home looking for stray cash, and Latoya sent them a cease and desist letter. Latoya insisted that she did not raid Michael's home, filling up plastic bags with cash. According to Latoya's cease and desist, the article in Vanity Fair falsely claimed that she showed up at Michael's mansion shortly after his death and loaded plastic bags, filling them with cash, and then throwing that in a duffel bag. The article goes on to describe Latoya's boyfriend, Jeffrey, leaving the home in a moving van. Latoya claims that the article describes her visit as a mad scramble for money, strongly insinuating that she stole large sums of cash from Michael's mansion. Latoya threatened to sue the publication if they did not issue a retraction. Now, there was never a lawsuit filed. But it seems that Joe Jackson may also have hinted that there was a conspiracy to kill his son. In an interview with Larry King in 2010, just hours after Dr. Conrad Murray was arraigned, Joe revealed that he believed that Conrad was part of a conspiracy to murder Michael Jackson, and the real individuals responsible have yet to be charged. He said, "To me, he's just a fall guy. There's other people, I think, involved with this whole thing. But I think that if Murray is interrogated, he would come clean and tell everything he knows." Joe went on further to say that Michael expressed concern that he would be murdered because he felt he would be unable to complete his plan, This Is It tour run of 50 concerts. He couldn't do all those shows back to back. Even his kids say that he told them he would be murdered, Joe said. So Latoya alleges that Michael told her before his death that they were going to kill him. Joe is alleging that before his death, Michael expressed concern that he couldn't do the concerts, so he might be killed. And even the children are saying that he told them he was going to be murdered. So let's take a look at these claims. Now, there's no denying that Michael Jackson had an amazing career and he made millions of dollars. But at the time of his death in 2009, it was alleged that the icon was millions of dollars in debt. According to a forensic accountant who testified in 2013 during Michael's wrongful death trial against AEG Live, he alleged that Michael was forced to pay annual debt payments of $30 million. He also said that interest from debt that he acquired along with lavish expenses is also where Michael's money went. He said that Michael spent a lot of money on jewelry, and although he received royalties from his music catalog annually, that was not enough to keep him out of debt. Michael's extreme debt started in 1994 with $30 million and quickly grew. And when he died, Michael was between $400 to $500 million in debt. The accountant further claimed during his testimony that much of Michael's wealth was also spent on the upkeep of his famous Neverland Ranch. Not many knew this, but not only was Neverland Michael's home, it also served as an amusement park for children in the area. Michael was known to have lavish slumber parties where he invited children, as well as movie days. Now, on the property, Michael had 2 internal train lines and a train station building with a 50-seat movie theater. He also had his own zoo on the property, and the animals kept there were exotic, including tigers, elephants, and a monkey, which everyone knows by the name of Bubbles. Now, the Jackson family ended up losing the wrongful death lawsuit against AEG Live, which was asking that the promoter be made to pay the family $1.5 billion. The family's lawsuit asked if AEG had hired Dr. Conrad Murray, who gave Michael the propofol, which killed him. It was agreed upon the jury that AEG did in fact hire Murray, but at the time Murray was not incapable of doing his job. The jury found AEG innocent of any role in Michael's death. Now, since Michael's death, he has made a substantial profit and is said to be now worth more dead than he was alive. In 2016, according to Forbes, he is now one of the top earning dead celebrities. By 2016, he had made around $115 million from both his concert movie release, This Is It, and a deal with Sony in 2020 for $200 million for 7 additional albums. He still receives royalties from his expansive music collection, which goes to his estate. So how is it that Michael Jackson, after his death, could have made a deal with Sony for $200 million? Well, in 2020, Sony and Michael Jackson's estate actually worked out the biggest deal that the music industry has ever seen. The contract, which allows Sony to release 10 albums of Michael Jackson projects over the next 7 years, could be worth up to $250 million and guarantees the estate $200 million. Chairman of Columbia Epic Records, which is a division of Sony that oversees the deal, said that the types of projects that are set to be released could be theater, maybe films and movies, computer games, or multimedia platforms. The deal also states that they will assist in paying Michael's $500 million debt. So Michael Jackson and Sony formed Sony/ATV Music Publishing more than 20 years ago. So when it's said that Michael Jackson was murdered for his catalog by Sony, it's just not his catalog that they are talking about. It's the rights to more than 2 million songs, including works by Taylor Swift, Lady Gaga, and the catalog's crown jewel, which is about 250 Beatles songs. When Michael died and Sony bought half of his Sony ATV Music Publishing, the purchase was a price of $750 million. But things haven't always gone so smooth between Sony and Michael Jackson's estate, because in 2014, a lawsuit was filed by Michael's estate accusing a production company of creating fake songs and then selling them through the estate and Sony. They alleged that the vocals on the songs produced were sung by an impersonator who admitted in a Facebook post that he performed all of the songs. In court, Michael's estate alleged that Sony did not have a First Amendment right to mislead consumers about the album's contents. During the lawsuit, Sony pulled the disputed tracks from Michael's 2010 album, removing them from all streaming platforms. Sony and the estate then reached a settlement to end the lawsuit. Now, neither side has ever disclosed the details on the terms of the agreement. Now, there may have been confusion amongst the family regarding Michael Jackson's will and the fact that he did not leave any money to his siblings, leaving 40% of his fortune to charity and the rest to his mother and his children. But one thing that cannot be denied is that Michael Jackson had talent and led his family out of poverty into a life that most of us will only dream of. We all know the Jackson 5. We know the boys in the family. We know that they were talented. We know the Jackson girls, that they were talented as well in each of their own careers. We know Tito, Jermaine, Michael, Marlon, Randy, and we know Latoya, Janet, and Rebbie. But did you know that there was actually one more that we can add to the Jackson clan? That's right, there is another half-sibling, and her name is Giovanni Jackson. She is the love child of Joe Jackson and a LAPD secretary named Cheryl Terrell. Joe Jackson had in the past denied that this was even true. Well, apparently, Joe and Cheryl had an affair back in the 70s, and in her book called The Bastard Child, daughter Giovanni details the life that she had with her famous father, Joe Jackson, and her half-siblings. Giovanni and her mother lived just 5 miles from the Jackson family home, and Joe would visit most days, lavishing Giovanni with gifts. Now, in 2018, when Joe Jackson died, Giovanni posted on her Instagram, "Allah, thank you for keeping the evildoers away from my father and our family during this time." Apparently, she has had a rift between the other members of the Jackson family, particularly Janet. Giovanni appeared on The Talk saying that the feud with Janet began several years earlier when Janet learned that her half-sister was allowed to call Joe Daddy. Apparently, Janet and her siblings had always had to call their father by his first name, which was Joseph, and as a result, this sparked a wave of jealousy.
Others have said, oh, he was just old school. Which was he to you?
I think it's old school. And that may extrapolate into being a little abusive. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Well, your father seems like he always had an opinion, that he wasn't afraid.
That's my father.
Are there some times when he's doing his own thing that you kind of cringe a little bit?
Yes, but he's my father, and he's very strong. He's very stubborn. He has his own way of doing things. That's Joseph.
Why do y'all call him Joseph?
Oh, I can't believe you're asking me this. Because it's bringing back a memory. I remember when I had called him Daddy, and he said, no, you call me Joseph. I'm Joseph to you. Never said it again.
You remember how old you were?
I was very young. Younger than 10, younger than 9. So I don't know why, and I've never questioned it. It is what it is, and I've just let it go. Joseph.
In 2009, Giovanni told a publication that Latoya would completely ignore her whenever their paths would cross, and although she would often attend Janet's concerts, she was never allowed to talk to her. She said that she feels rejected by some of her family, and it is completely upsetting and hurtful. I had the hardest childhood. It was just as blue as Michael's and just as blue as my other brothers and sisters. But then I grew up and found that they don't even want to have anything to do with me. Whoo, child. Now that was some tea, because I did not even know that Joe had a love child. How many people think that there could possibly be another one out there somewhere? Sound off in the comments below. Now, many say that Latoya Jackson has been estranged from her family because of the accusations that she made in her first book. She alleged that Joseph Jackson molested her and Rebbie, and she's not sure if it happened to Janet. Well, she has had a strained relationship with her family members because of these accusations. But when doing promo for her book Starting Over, it seems that Latoya may have had a change of heart.
You have also in the past made comments about your father, Joe, accusing him of molesting you and other forms of child abuse. And now you say, quote, no other man, alive or dead, has done anything like what Joseph did for his family, and I thank him for that. So is this a contradiction?
No, it is not. I thank my father. My father did a wonderful job of raising all of us. And I have to tell you that when you're young, you see things differently than when you get older. When you get older and you have children and you're used to your nieces and nephews, you understand why your father disciplined you the way you did. You understand. Back then, parents beat their children back then. They don't do that today. If you do it today, you're going to jail.
But you stand by the comments you made about molestation and child abuse.
My father is a very wonderful man, Matt. I have to tell you something. And my father's getting older. I love him with all my heart.
I'm out of time, but I just want to make sure, you standing by your original statements about your dad?
My father's a wonderful person, and he always will be. He has a great heart. And yes, I do love him, and I do care for him a great deal.
Latoya Jackson. Latoya, it's good to have you.
Well, I think it's safe to say that the Jackson family is like no other family in the history of show business. The scandals, the secrets that we discussed in this video were shocking to say the least. And I know that there is much more to be uncovered. So drop down in the comments and let me know what you think about the accusations and theories that were alleged by Latoya and Joseph Jackson. Do you believe that there was a conspiracy to murder Michael? Do you think that Conrad Murray was just a fall guy and that there are others involved? And do you think that Conrad Murray knows that he's part of this conspiracy? Sound off below. Now, what do you think about the half-sister Giovanni's claims that the Jackson siblings want nothing to do with her? In her book, she also says that Katherine Jackson knew about her and would even bring her to the family home when she was little. She says that Katherine was actually very nice to her and still is to this very day. Now, that does not surprise me at all about Mama Katherine. Does it surprise you? Please drop it below. Well, guys, this has been another video from the Sweet Pea Diaries. Be sure to like this video, share the video, but most importantly, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and I will catch you on the next one. Bye, guys.